Hello, I'm Mark Tucker,
And I'm Alan Furstenberg. Welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Mark. How's your week been so far?
It's been going okay. It's moving right along, trying to progress a project through to completion.
Always fun. I always love it when I can, the design is done, the talking is done, and I can dive in and just get going with stuff.
Yeah, in this particular case, most of my coding is done except for I'm waiting on a dependency from another team.
Ooh.
So and then I've got like a whole bunch of little things to do that need to happen to move things from different environments. And this is a bigger organization, and so there's lots of T's to cross and I's to dot. So making sure that things go through, and so that's what I'm working on. I'm excited to get that out this year. It's been a big part of my last year working on it. So excited to see it progress to the end.
So very, very cool. You posted something a couple of weeks ago that I thought it was an interesting question, and it might be worth discussing. I think it was in reaction to I believe Checkers announced that they were starting to do voice recognition in some of their ordering systems. Checkers is a fast food restaurant for people who aren't familiar with it. And you posted this tweet: if fast food restaurants want to automate the drive-through with voice ordering, then they should already have started recording and analyzing those audio orders last year. And I think it's a great point, and it starts talking a little bit about voice, where voice is going beyond the speakers at home. I think is where you were going with that, right?
Yeah. And just thinking about, you may not, it's a situation where once you start thinking about it, you're like, hey, I'm talking to somebody through this microphone with a menu there. It really is not too far afield. The technology exists that ordering could just be via a voice ordering assistant. Mm-hmm. Or a voice bot or something, yeah.
And I think McDonald's is also beginning to do work on that front.
Yeah. And I think like Vixen in the UK has already done some work in that area. But I was just kind of thinking through, just knowing how it takes a long time to go through process audio, that could be, to create language models and stuff from it could take a long time. There are some special cases with ordering through food. I was just like thinking of a recent situation that I had. It's not always that you say, hey, I want a number one and a number three, right? It's like I'd like a number one, but make it a double, no tomatoes. I'd like a large cheese curds. I'm thinking of Culver's. And then they ask, like, what do you want to drink, right? Or you're like, just the sandwich, because maybe you don't want the other stuff. And so there's just a whole bunch of variations of how you can say things, and you're kind of in the context of this one item that you're talking about, and then you move on to the next item, and so you're in the context of that, but it's all in the context of one order, and you're switching contexts, like, oh wait, no, go back to I don't, on the chicken sandwich, I don't want, this, or make it spicy.
Right.
And you're just kind of throwing out phrases that can really throw, your voice assistants kind of for a loop.
It's really interesting that your thoughts about it centered around the conversation design and the language model and all of that part. And I totally agree with you. It's a really, really complex set of issues there. And when I read your tweet, my immediate thought was, okay, so we're going to be dealing with a speaker in an uncontrolled environment. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a lot of background noise, and we're not going to always know how close we are. We're dealing with a lot of different voices. And so all of that, now means it's the speech recognition part is a lot more complicated. And so that was on the first half of what you were talking about. And then on the second half of you need to have started collecting this information a while, I suddenly go, wonder if anybody's ever thought about the privacy issues involved in a speaker pointed at your car.
Yeah, no, and actually I was thinking of all three when I was thinking through this, because I'm like, there is the whole language model thing. In order to build a language model, you're going to need to have the audio, because you're going to need to understand the different ways that people talk when they're ordering something. There's not just, if you were just to sit back and like in a pristine environment and think, okay, I'm going to have a order item intent, and it's going to have an utterance is order number 1, and then order number 2, and then like
it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
That's not how people work.
That's only one part of a whole way. So I was thinking about that side of things, and then I was thinking about, wow, there's lots of situations like food ordering where there's already this microphone hooked up to a speaker or a headset. Are the companies that have those systems already adding recording devices to those systems that are already in place so that you could just plug it in and turn it on? Because
right, and if they are, should we, is there a
know
notice
about
somewhere? Right.
Yeah. Should there be something on the end of that menu,
right.
or
yeah,
like a little message
there's
at
something
the
over
beginning
the
of,
speaker? Yeah.
this order is going to be recorded or something?
It's a really good question, and I'm not sure anybody's talked about that.
Yeah, because you're thinking, well, people are doing it, and people are talking more about doing voice bots for food ordering. So things have already happened, but are they going without that data? Are they simulating the voice conversations, or are they actually recording real conversations? And what is their responsibility to notify the people that are being recorded? That's I don't know what the legal side of things are for that, but
I imagine that it's different from state to state, because
yeah.
Then we start getting into single party versus both party.
Two-party, yep.
Yep. And every state's got different rules about that. So I don't know. That's a really good question.
So then I started thinking about, well, because the reason why you'd want to actually do audio is because then you could start creating models that would simulate what the sound is. Okay, loud car, or this particular location versus some other location, raining versus windy day.
Oh wow, yeah.
Versus you've got all kinds of things that you're trying to deal with that. And then my thought started just kind of spiraling out to, well, like, what are other situations where you're talking to somebody through a microphone that isn't a drive-through, that could be a situation where you might want to put a voice assistant. So then what would be the situation with recording those types of things? Are there, any difference? I'm like thinking like you drive through and you talk to a teller at the bank, right? Through the drive-through, and you might be giving information about your account number or something like that, or like
a drive-through at a pharmacy.
Exactly.
Where you're now getting into medical information, which in the US is a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, well, I could see that, but that's different. That's a different level of privacy and concern that you have by, letting people know that you're, because they're talking about this is the medication or that you're taking, right? Or like, here's the instructions on taking it when you're talking with the pharmacist, or, I haven't thought through all the different situations, but those are like 3 common situations where you're talking, through to somebody through a microphone that could potentially be a voice assistant in the future if all these other, roadblocks are
right.
Are solved.
One of the other things that this makes me think of, and this is more closely related to the assistants that we do have today, is when more and more of those assistants run in car. So while I'm driving, I can now place an order. Currently, I can place an order for a bunch of fast food restaurants via their app.
Yep.
Okay, so what if that app now has an assistant built into it? And what if that assistant could now actually speak through your car? So it's now totally hands-free while you're driving. You get scenarios like you say you want to order something and it starts coming up in the car and having that conversation with you.
Yep.
And the dynamics there are different than the dynamics in the drive-through, but there's additional complications to it. So it's a lot of interesting questions.
Yeah. And, because of the pandemic, there's more and more situations where they've allowed for, pickup or takeout type orders, curbside pickup.
Yeah, everyone is
or delivery. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's an interesting thing I feel like all of the places like Grubhub, for example,
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that they haven't tried to introduce a voice ordering mechanism yet.
Yeah, and it's challenge having done some analysis for potential projects that were in that realm of food ordering and stuff. It's complicated. You start off with use cases like reordering a past, something that you've saved, like a saved order or something is easier, by a lot than, starting from an order from scratch. Right. Because then how do you surface all the items, you might be dealing with somebody that's a first time or infrequent or, a veteran as far as, I order from this place every week. So I know that I want a XYZ plus, Q or something like that.
Right. Let me get my usual order, except, substitute fries instead of hash browns.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the advantage is that on those sorts of things, you've got the ability to use some of that personal context. You have the notion of a regular order. Right now, and probably not for the foreseeable future, you're not going to drive up to a drive-through and say to the speaker, I'll have my usual.
Yeah.
Because that's way, there's not enough context that we're going to have there. Or probably not anyway.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting is how could the drive-through experience change? Could you, while you're driving to McDonald's, could you go through, talk to your car about what your order is, and then you drive up to the drive-through and it automatically just transmits your order and puts you in the queue of where you're at in the drive-through and, drive through and pick it up.
Right. Or it's already put it through and, all you need to do is you're going through the drive-through, skipping the order and payment section and going straight to the pickup. There are drive-throughs that do that now as well.
Yeah.
And how does it identify you when you're there? And there are a variety of ways to do that now. We've got license plate readers, we've got things like Easy Pass, readers. So all of that's certainly in the realm of possibilities.
Or something like what Tile does with their Tile transmissions for identifying where items are. There could be something along those lines. It could be something that's transmitted from your mobile phone.
I was going to say, mobile phone just does a Bluetooth pairing or a Bluetooth identifier. Certainly, again, a lot of different options. It'll be interesting to see where they integrate with voice as part of, providing that context and providing that ubiquitous delivery.
Yeah. So there's lots of interesting things to think about with this. It's just kind of one of those fun topics. It was just one of those things where I had started, I thought about something and it kind of just a little thought exercise started connecting things. I'm like, wow, I haven't really, thought exactly about it in this way.
And, one of the things that I think is relevant is when we first started thinking about this, I'm like, I don't know, this is mostly a designer problem. If we're just talking about the conversation, that's a design problem. Not to make it, not to make it sound like designers have it easy. But, as part of a team, that's the sort of thing that I turn to a designer for to figure out. But it's also up, one of the roles of us as developers is to point out hey, I think this is more complex than we've spec'd it out as.
Yeah.
Or if we had context, this would be easier.
Right.
Or, hey, here are some technologies that are there that, or coming that we need to know more about to do this.
Yeah. Or like,
Or
this is our existing mobile app. This is what we would need to do to modify that to progress it so it's more voice ordering. So yeah, there's lots of different things that
Right.
you can do that's on the tech side. It's trying to figure out how to implement this that's going to affect the solution in the end.
Right. And certainly when it comes to some of the ethical questions, I think it is important for us as developers, as engineers, to be able to raise those ethical questions.
Right.
Where it may not have necessarily been addressed elsewhere as part of the project.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of developer roles that are in play here.
Yeah. And it's good to remind yourself, just because something is technically possible, it may not always be wise to do it.
So, I think it's an interesting question, and one that I'd certainly love to see what other people talk about and feel about this one. So as always, if you have thoughts, feel free to message Mark and I. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, comments down below. And if we get a lot of feedback, we'll take this up again on another Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
Have a good week, Mark.
Yeah, you too, Alan. And enjoy your next trip through the drive-thru.